The Two Mrs. Carrolls from 1947 was a psychological thriller starring Humphrey Bogart and Barbara Stanwyck. I'll admit that going into this film, I was thrilled because both Bogart and Stanwyck are two of my favorite actors from the era of old films, and I was really anxious to see the pairing. Well, the film was different, but let's take a look. The film opens up with the character Geoffrey, Humphrey Bogart, and Sally, Barbara Stanwyck. They're out in the placid countryside by a stream. Now, he's an artist doing some sketches, and the two of them have apparently been romantically involved for a few weeks now. But while they're out there enjoying nature, they're soon interrupted by Scotsman Macgregor actor Colin Campbell, who comes warning them of rain, so they scurry off to find shelter in a nearby cave. It's at this point Geoffrey leaves his coat with Sally while he goes to help Macgregor. But while waiting, Sally accidentally discovers a letter in Geoffrey's coat. Uh-oh. Well, when he returns, she confronts him about it, and he reveals, yes, he's been married, but this is a letter of divorce. Well, she's not having any of it, and Geoffrey heads home, and once he gets home, he's greeted by his daughter, who informs him that his wife, who is an invalid apparently, is in her room resting. He talks to his daughter Bea, actress Ann Carter, who is this creepily articulate kid in how she acts and talks. You know, things like, "Don't get excited, father. We both want her to live because we love her so much." You know, stuff like that. Geoffrey goes in to bring his wife some warm milk, and the way the scene is constructed is really kind of eerie, as he seems delayed in going in with the milk. It's got the creepy music, and the viewer, we never actually see the interaction of him and his wife. It's kind of a little dark, not sure what's going on. Well, we cut to the town of Ashton. Apparently a little bit of time has passed, and there's the character Charles, played by actor Patrick O'Moore, who's been in a few films I've seen lately, including Sahara with Bogart. He's a good actor. He goes to visit with Mrs. Carroll, and while waiting to see her, chats with the weirdly articulate girl Bea, who reveals that 2 years have passed since their mother died, and she has been immortalized in this freaky painting on the wall. Sally soon arrives and meets with Charles, and we find out that they were former old lovers, but she had run off on him years ago to go back to Geoffrey, and they got married. So she goes to get Geoffrey in his room, and he's up working on a painting with some seriously ominous Franz Waxman music going on. He can't get his painting right. So Sally invites him to come down and meet with Charles and company, but he's not interested. He makes a very funny variation on his classic Casablanca line. "I have a feeling that this is the beginning of a beautiful hatred." Yeah, I love it. That's great. The guests arrive, and it includes character Cecily, who's played by the very lovely Alexis Smith. She's been in a bunch of other films I've watched, including Conflict with Bogart, that I recently reviewed, and also in The Turning Point with William Holden. Her uptight mother is there as well, Mrs. Latham, and she was played by Isabel Elsom, who was the gossipy old woman in the movie Love is a Many Splendid Thing, also with William Holden. Sensing some 6 degrees of William Holden going on here. Well, anyhow, they have tea, and Cecily seems somewhat forward and flirtatious with Geoffrey. You know, because women so often fall into a swoon over Bogart in these old films. Well, she wants him to paint her portrait, and the two of them go inside together, and she continues her flirtatious banter with him, and they look at some of his paintings, one of the Mrs. Carroll paintings, and she says, "Tell me, Geoffrey, do you always marry the women you paint?" Saucy. Well, he tells Sally about this later in private, and basically just says that the Cecily character was just annoying him. But we, the audience, we're not so sure. Well, we cut to a scene at a horse race where Geoffrey, Sally, Cecily, and Charles have all gathered together to watch the horses race. The flirty talk continues, but Sally seems not to mind. She's too distracted cheering for the horses. But soon we see Cecily and Geoffrey holding hands. The cad. Well, as Geoffrey goes off to get another ticket, he has an encounter with this shady character, Blagden, actor Barry Bernard, who seems to make him very nervous. The music also suggests something sinister about him, too. Blagden sort of has a Bob Hoskins vibe to him, but maybe it's just me. We find out that Geoffrey is being blackmailed by this Blagden guy, and he gives him an envelope. And we cut from a scene of Bogart smoking to another scene of Bogart smoking, this time outside of his window, where Sally is in bed ill. Uh-oh. Dr. Tuttle, played by actor Nigel Bruce, he's been in a bunch of films I've reviewed, is there, and he's a jovial old fellow. We'll have you right as rain in no time. Yeah, come on, you never say things like that in a film, old boy. Well, the doctor talks with Geoffrey a little before leaving, and we, the viewer, we know Geoffrey's up to something here. Geoffrey tells Bea to go visit Sally, as Cecily arrives again, accompanied symbolically by a cold gust of wind as the door opens. And soon Geoffrey and her embrace. Oh, come on, man, not good. But alas, she says that she's leaving. Cecily's out of town because she wants Geoffrey all to herself, so she's going off to Rio. Well, Geoffrey's not too happy about this. She leaves. Geoffrey talks to Bea and tells her she's going to be going off to Weatherly School, which she seems really happy about. I guess it's kind of like one of those Harry Potter schools where, they send the kid away for months and months. Well, Sally comes down. She's a little bit ill, but she's happy to be with Geoffrey. She really wants to see his new painting, but he refuses. Sally goes to check on Bea, who's packing up for her school, and Bea seems totally cool about it, but Sally, while she's helping, starts to find out more and more of its details about Geoffrey and how he took care of the previous Mrs. Carroll. So Bea just chatters away about it, but we the viewer watch Sally look more and more alarmed as she starts to put things together. Franz Waxman lets us know musically that, yeah, it's all starting to come together. Well, Geoffrey, meanwhile, goes to meet with Blagden, and he's done with his blackmail stuff and only gives him a final amount. And it's interesting that at this point, Bogart looks like he's back in his Rick wardrobe from Casablanca, but yeah, just a minor detail. Anyhow, Geoffrey's had it with the blackmail and decides to club Blagden to death. Kapow! Well, back at the house, Sally convinces Bea to unlock the room so she can see the painting, and it's a freaky portrait of Sally. She naturally passes out. Well, later that night, Cecily, Isabel, Charles, and the doctor arrive at the house for a dinner party. And Charles and Cecily have some witty banter about relationships and so on. And Charles, too, is starting to get suspicious about what's going on with Geoffrey. And he goes to talk to Sally. Now, Geoffrey, meanwhile, arrives home just as the guests are leaving. He's ready to take Bea to the station for her school, but changes his mind, and instead, Christine the maid will bring her. That leaves Sally and Geoffrey alone at the house. And as we near the end of the film, we the viewers are starting to wonder what will happen. Will Sally finally confront Geoffrey about the past, about what happened to the former Mrs. Carroll? What will Geoffrey do? Is he the killer mentioned in the newspapers? Well, the ending is pretty creepy and definitely has a Hitchcock-style, suspense-filled conclusion. I thought it was actually a pretty cool way they wrapped up the film. So, some concluding thoughts about this one. This was directed by director Peter Godfrey, who also directed Barbara Stanwyck in the movie Christmas in Connecticut from 1945, which is a great holiday movie. I really enjoyed that one. His direction is very atmospheric. There's lots of wind and rain, the ringing of bells with images of blowing curtains and creepy paintings. That part of it was really good. And Barbara Stanwyck, as always, I find an amazing actress. She really does a great job as this loving wife who's slowly transforming into this very suspicious character, wondering what is going on. Bogart does a fine job, as always, as the creepy artist husband with the dubious agenda. I mean, heck, he can play a good guy or a bad guy. I still think he's a great actor. And again, that Franz Waxman score really added a very spooky element to so many of the scenes of this film. Well, from what I've read, the critics didn't go very easy on this film, namely with how Bogart doesn't really fit the role of a murderous artist. I guess I can see that. In one of the Bogart books I was reading through, he mentions that this was the worst film of his career. I don't know. I might put The Return of Dr. X a little higher on that list. Yeah, this one wasn't too bad, but I will admit I agree it didn't feel quite right for him. I did like the look and feel of the film, though, and again, the music was great. Some have pointed out apparent similarities to the film Gaslight from 1944 as well. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I've read about that film, yeah, I guess I could pick up why they would say that. And just a final thought, I think it's funny that they made this film right after Bogart had married his wife number 4, Lauren Bacall. So I thought that was kind of funny that just immediately following the honeymoon, here he is playing this murderous man plotting to kill his wife. That's great. So anyhow, that's The Two Mrs. Carrolls from 1947. This is a good film, and it's worth checking out.